So by the time I got to college, the damage was done. My beliefs were beyond solidified. I did the normal things after college. I moved away for a couple of years. I came back. Back then, I thought I was so strong. I always thought, I always knew I was going to be successful. Like there was never a doubt. It was never a question. I was going to be successful. And of the 5 grandchildren, I was going to be the most successful. I had goals. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to get married. I wanted a partner. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted to be respected. And for some reason, for some really, really stupid fucking reason, I felt like I needed to be married before I was 30. I met Patrick when I was 28. We were married in less than 2 years. We got married on my 30th birthday. And everybody thought we were a fairy tale. Everybody thought it was perfect, and my wedding was a fairy tale. My wedding was exactly what I would have always dreamed of. But things shifted and things changed. And once we came home from the honeymoon, it was almost as if he had won, because he knew I didn't believe in divorce, because if you got divorced, it was just because you didn't try hard enough. Things had changed. I agreed to have children, even though I was very clear about I didn't want to be a single stay-at-home mom, and I didn't want to stay home, and I didn't want to be a single married mom, and all of these things. And he told me how he wanted to coach their t-ball games and do all of these things, and I believed all of it. At the time, I was working in the fitness industry, and I was a coach and a personal trainer, and fitness was something that we did, that we loved and we did together. We met in the gym. Back then, I was your typical 20-something-year-old fitness trainer, right? Like, no time for excuses. Push yourself harder. You can do this. And then I got pregnant, and I was so sick. I couldn't work out. Everybody talks about postpartum depression, but nobody talks about pregnancy depression. I was so depressed during pregnancy, and I couldn't work out, and I couldn't do so many things. And I hated life on every level. I was on bed rest by 28 weeks. I threw up the morning I had her. I threw up every day of my pregnancy. It was awful. Once I had her, things changed even more between him and I. But there were so many outside factors. I kept making excuses. I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. I had my second child in 2016. And Shortly after that, I decided I was going to open a brick and mortar fitness studio. It was called Vitality Buffalo. It was a boutique, and it was designed for moms. My entire concept laid around the fact that, like, it all laid around body image. And the fact that if you couldn't learn to like your body, then you didn't think you were worthy. And if you didn't think you were worthy, then you definitely were never going to have boundaries. And this is all because you're chasing a dream chasing a goal that isn't even yours. Like, what? This goal that's not yours, it was sold to you, it was given to you, it was packaged. In fact, you didn't even know you bought it, because everywhere you look, the world tells us that your body is not good enough. I became an expert in body image, in how body image is controlled by the patriarchy, how there's more plus size women than not, but yet the plus size clothing options are less. If you walk into any given department store and you're looking for the plus size, you feel like the outcast, even though more women are shopping in that section than not. How Instagram is nothing more than filtered images that have been doctored and made to show you some untrue reality, because none of it's reality. Reality is the pile of clothes on the floor. Reality is we scroll through and we walk into a gym and we're like, I want J-Lo's ass, and I want Carrie Underwood's legs, and I want, Shakira's tummy, and and the reality is, can't have that. Because that ass comes with a totally different set of legs and a totally different tummy. But two, because in so many cases, that's not even her ass, because there was surgeon's hands at play. There's shapewear underneath. It's in the lighting, the staging, the posing that makes it look like that. I had done boudoir shoots that I recorded on my phone in the intense bright light that showed the truth versus the final image from the photographer, where it's a close-up, where they dim the lighting, where you're posed, and so all you're seeing is this, but you're not seeing the god-awful strange positions that you're trying to hold your body in, all to smooth out those little wrinkles or cellulite dimples. I could pull up facts about following the money, about diet trends and fads, and about how every single one of them sets you up to fail. Every single one of them makes you feel like a failure, because there's no money to be made if you don't feel broken. That became a message that I embodied so hard. But I didn't know how to sell it, because people didn't want to buy body image. They wanted to lose weight. But when they came into the gym and we would have these conversations and I was doing all of this coaching and I was changing their lives, I had women who would come into the gym and they would tell me, I can't lift that weight. And I would say, why not? And they'd say, it's too heavy. And I would say, you have a toddler who weighs 3 times more than that. Lift it. They would say, I don't want to get bulky. And I would say, you're not gonna. Women have to intentionally train to get bulky, unless you are one of the very, very, very rare hormone composites that naturally bulks. But that is very far and few between. Okay. Women have to intentionally train to get bulky, and they have to eat to get bulky. So just simply lifting heavy weights is not going to make you bulky. And what I started watching happening was not only were women getting healthier physically because they were coming to the gym, and see, my niche, my goals when I owned the studio, it was my clients were the people who they've done everything. They've gone everywhere and they didn't stay anywhere. They stayed with me. That was my gold. That was what I could do. Because the workouts I offered were the same as any other corner gym. Anyone. There was nothing different I was doing in the workouts. There was no new science. It was in the way that I coached them. It was in the way that I talked to them. And as they started to find their worthiness, as they started to gain more confidence, I started to watch the way their lives were unfolding, and it was fucking amazing. That's when I felt my most alive. But we can't stay on top of the world forever. Three weeks after I opened the gym, my then husband attempted suicide inside it. It was my daughter's 3rd birthday. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment that my life got sent into a complete tailspin, and I hit survival running so fast. That was the moment that I gave 100% to the gym, but I only had 20% to give. So I gave 100% of the 20% that I had, but whew, it was barely enough. Overnight, we had 0 income coming in. Overnight, I had fears and dreams of getting the call from police. He was angry with me. Oh God, he was so angry with me. I went through this entire experience that affected me on so many ways and on so many levels. And yet it was almost as if people felt like none of it was appropriate. Like, I wasn't supposed to talk about how I was feeling because this was about him. I wasn't supposed to talk about how hard it was for me because this was about him. The only repeating thought I remember having over and over and over again was, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for this. The next 2.5 years was survival on steroids. He quit his professional job. He went to work for $10 an hour. Every decision that we had made up to that point was made on a $75,000 salary. And we made a lot of concessions on that salary so that I could open the business. Found out that he never actually wanted me to open the business. He was so jealous. He had so much anger. There were so many things wrong. And it sent me on a path of, well, it put me on the path of suicide prevention becoming one of my main goals. But it changed the way I started looking at things, and it started the servings of humble pie. Any and everything I've ever thought, felt, said in those moments were challenged. We were on food stamps. We couldn't afford our mortgage. It was so bad. And there was nothing I could do about it. I debated giving up the business. I really didn't want to. And so I didn't. When COVID hit the US, it was a really big stress on the business. It was a really big stress on the household. I locked the doors. And I remember in July of 2020 being on the phone with one of my girlfriends and saying, maybe I need to just close the gym. But I didn't. I let so many people talk me out of it because I loved it, and I did love it, but the times had changed, and what I loved about it no longer existed. The gym helped me keep my identity in my sparkle in the midst of a god-awful marriage and personal situation. The day that the gym closed was the same day that I finally said I filed for divorce. Because it was the day that I opened the mail, and there was a letter from his therapist saying again that because he ditched the last X amount of sessions, he was dismissing him. And at that moment, I fucking lost it. That was the moment when I realized that no matter how bad I want this, I can't do the work for you. I was willing to go to every therapy session with him. There was nothing I wasn't willing to do, and I was in therapy on my own. But that was it. You can't make somebody quit drinking when they don't think they have a problem. You can't force somebody to heal, to get vulnerable, to have a conversation. By that point in time, I had no sparkle in me. I was a shell of a person. I was fucking broken. I had already cried and grieved everything I had for my marriage. Like, by the time I called it, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, I gave it everything I had. But I hated being home. The gaslighting was out of control. Money would go missing. There were so many things. So many things. There were weird things. The entire time we were married, well, the entire time we lived in our house, the basement stressed me. I didn't need to go down there. He did the laundry and that was fine. At one point, he got sick. I had to do the laundry. And when I went downstairs to the basement, there was water all over the floor. And there were dirty dishes in the stationary tub. When I asked him about it, the answers didn't even make sense. It just, after he moved out, if I didn't have witnesses and people with me while we were cleaning the basement, the bedrooms, rearranging furniture, and making the house mine again, I don't think I would have believed the amount of cans and bottles I found underneath my 3-year-old's bed, hidden all over the basement, like in with the paint cans, up in random shelves, like just in weird boxes. Like, it was weird. They were in the back bushes because he was trying to hide his drinking from me. But the problem was he became a different person when he drank, so hiding it was never really an option. But then he would tell me he wasn't drinking, even though I could clearly see that he was. And this is where the gaslighting became, making me feel absolutely fucking crazy, right? Oh, the abuse was to the point that I used to wish he would just hit me. Because if he hit me, I knew I could leave. I remember standing in the basement with my dad, trying to figure out where the water was coming in and what we had to do and how we even got here. And I remember my dad saying, "How much longer are you going to fucking do this for? You didn't lose. It's time to cut your losses and move on." felt like I lost. I felt like a failure. I took my divorce personal. It hurt. I can look back now and say that there was a lot. I had a lot of I have a lot of skills now I didn't have back then, and I'm sure there were a lot of things I did that I could have done differently. I was by far not a perfect wife or human. But man, so I finally left. One day I came home and he was in the house. The divorce was already done and finalized. The house was mine. I remember the terror because I pulled in the driveway and his car was in the driveway. The windows were open. The kids were strapped in their car seats. The kids were screaming. And he was in the house. I'd already changed the locks twice. And I remember that when the cop said to me, I get it, this is your forever home. You did so much work on it, but do you want to be a statistic? I put the house on the market. I was kicking and screaming like a 3-year-old. How bad the pain of giving up that house was, I can't even describe. That broke me. Any little piece that was still standing fell, crumbled, broke in that moment. I was 39 years old. And I had nothing. I moved back in with my parents for a little bit, back into my old bedroom, put everything in storage. I started working my ass off at the gym, except for it wasn't the gym anymore. Well, it was the gym, but I wasn't marketing it for the gym anymore. I was so fucking lost. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was coaching. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't think straight. COVID had changed so many things. It had changed my entire client base. And I didn't know what to do. At the same time, all of that was going on in my personal life. I had brought in 2 friends during COVID to rent out rooms from me at the studio to try to help bring income in. I started losing clients. I found out years later that some of those clients left because of the girls I brought in. They didn't, the vibe, the energy changed and they didn't like it. And I don't blame them. I wish they would have said something to me back then, but they didn't. By the time I finally closed the gym, I had like 5 clients. I was doing stretch therapy, but I wasn't in love with that. I literally was in a place where I couldn't even think straight. I stayed at work late because I felt like a failure. I didn't want to be a failure. When I was at home, I didn't like being at my parents' house because it reminded me I was failing. And they never told me I was failing. Never. We were there, but I didn't feel like a parent. I couldn't even take care of my kids. I didn't know that when you start healing, when you choose to leave survival and you finally find yourself in a place that's safe, that you will sleep like, who was it that slept? Rumpelstiltskin? You will sleep like the little man in one of the fairy tales. I don't really even know which one it is, but you will sleep like them. You will sleep like Sleeping Beauty just got pricked on the sleeping wheel. Like, when you finally put yourself in a safe space and you can relax, it feels like this massive depression comes over you, except for I don't actually think it's depression. I think it's recovery. I was trying to make things work, but it felt like everything I was trying was wrong. I became really sensitive to being a good person, to being a fair person. And that came from a lot of things, but I became so focused on it that I overcompensated. I had no boundaries anywhere. When I was home, I felt like the middle child. My mom made the rules for my kids. She parented them. At the end of the day, I still had $3,000 in overhead every single month I had to meet for the studio. I was juggling money left and right. I was strapped and lost. And every time I tried to figure out who I was, it felt like nobody wanted to listen. Nobody understood. My resentment was growing because I felt like a failure. I didn't know how to change it. My parents' resentment was growing because I was never home and they were raising my kids because I didn't do enough around the house. But every time I did anything, my father told me it was wrong. My dad is extremely particular. Tensions were rising and rising. And I was in a bad situation I didn't know how to get out of. I didn't have all the tools yet. And I was the free thinker born into what felt like prison, into a blue collar family that just didn't understand. My entire life in my family, I always felt like the outcast. I would get called out a lot for kind of sitting on the outskirts or not being part of a conversation. But nobody liked to have a conversation on the level I wanted to. And when I talked, nobody ever understood what I was saying. And I always felt like they were mocking me. I never really felt like I belonged. And at this point in my life, I didn't feel like I accomplished anything for them to be proud of. I was still having issues at the studio. The first time I learned I could change my mind, I had just realized that a person I knew had committed suicide. She was a mental health therapist. She had a little girl. She had all the tools and resources. I kept saying I wanted out. I didn't want to be in the lease I signed anymore with the girls I invited into my space to rent. I wanted complete separation. I wanted to divorce from them. I didn't know what to do. And every time I would mention it, my mom would say, well, you made a commitment to them. I was raised to when you made a commitment, you made the commitment. Can't change your mind. That's a sin. It's unethical. It's inauthentic. That day was the closest I ever came to suicide. I remember calling my therapist. She came over. My mom came over. And I remember saying, I can't do this. Like, do you understand where I'm at? And I think that's something that we often miss. When we talk and when we communicate and when we interact with other people, we often we dismiss their feelings, we dismiss their thoughts. And so I was dismissed until I wasn't, because I finally had made it clear how serious this was. I called my landlord and we figured it out. But see, when I did that, because I had no boundaries and I was trying to instill boundaries with them, because they had laundry overtaking things and they were moving things, and I was doing all of these things, but their rent wasn't increasing. Like, I put in a washer and dryer and I ran plumbing and I ran all of these things. And when I figured out the rent originally, like I didn't know, because you don't know what you don't know. So I took my rent and I divided it by 3. Well, that was great, but what about the fucking utilities? What about all these other things? And so what happened was, as I would start attempting to set boundaries, they didn't like them. And when I pulled out of the lease, and they were going to be able to keep the lease, they got to keep their space, they got to keep all of it. But their feelings, they were so nasty and they were so mean, and the things they accused me of and the things that they said and the emails they sent out and the way they trashed me. Even though deep down inside me, I knew I did what I could, and it felt like I was failing at every single thing, at every level. No matter where I turned around, there was another bill I couldn't pay. There was another invoice. I was defaulting on another thing, and I literally I felt really, really bad about myself.